Welcome to the She Wins podcast. I'm your host, Heather Sumlin, and today I have Carley McCord. Karen is an author, and I am just going to let her tell a little bit more about who she is and what she does, and we're excited for your book to come out soon.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. It hit bestseller last week, and so on the Amazon list. So beyond what I expected, beyond what I expected. I'm Karen McCord, and I have three children and a husband and a dog. My husband and I have been married for 46 years, and I have three children, Carly, who is now deceased, and then Carson. And then, of course, I have some great son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws and two grandchildren, Palmer and Parker. So that's a little bit about me. But another thing is I am an educator, and I have been an educator for 45 years. And so I've done that for quite a long time. And the other thing is that I do have a journalism background, just like Carly did. And I always laughed because I said journalism runs in the genes of our family. But my dad was on radio for almost 30 years. And so when I was in second grade, I can remember he took me to he was going to interview Ronald Reagan. He was governor of California at the time. And we laughed because we were sitting in the car reading comic books. And my dad said, "Come on, you have to come with me to interview Ronald Reagan." Well, we don't want to interview and meet Ronald Reagan. We want to read these comic books instead, you know. So he has done he did journalism for a very long time. And so consequently, I did take up journalism, worked at a radio station for a while. My husband worked at a radio station for a bit until we got into our careers of other choices. And then, of course, Carly got into the business. However, I do want to say Carly got into the business because of her own talents, because by then my dad was way out of the business and that sort of thing. So, but I do believe it ran into the family tree.
Well, tell us a little bit about Carly, because I know that your book is based off of her life and memory and legacy. Is that right?
Right. That is exactly right. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Carly, and I'll start with the sad part first, because that's kind of how the book starts. It gets the elephant in the room out. And basically, on December 28th, 2019, Carly got on a small plane to cover the LSU Tigers. And the interesting thing is the LSU Tigers were playing in the Peach Bowl, and this was the game right before the championship game. This was going to determine the championship game. And Joe Burrow was playing. He was quarterback. And, you know, it was the kind of known as the best college football ever. You know, I'm sure people will debate that. But 2019 was a very good year. They went undefeated. Interestingly enough, she covered the team, but she also covered the Pelicans and the Saints and a lot of jobs with ESPN, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So she was a busy lady. And so, but there was one more element to the story. Her father-in-law, Stephen Ensminger, was the offensive coach for the LSU Tigers. And so he was coaching in the game that was going to be played in the Peach Bowl. So it was a big event, and it was a really big event for the whole family. So she felt as though she needed to get there, but she had to cover and do some things with her other commitments, you know, like the Pelicans and Saints. She was a freelancer, so she had a lot of other commitments to deal with. So one of her really good friends offered her a spot on the plane, and she took it. And so needless to say, and unfortunately, the plane crashed at 9:07, and the game was probably at about 11 o'clock. I don't remember. It was an early morning or an afternoon game. I can't tell you that part of it. But and so when it crashed, you know, everybody, you know, got word except for us. You know how they always say next of kin, but we, you know, the news hit before we found out. And I do think that's probably because social media and, you know, things are harder to keep under wraps now because of that. So anyway, she passed away on December 28th, and needless to say, the book addresses that very early.
Mm-hmm.
And then the book is written kind of like present, past.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually talk about my struggles and the grief path at the very beginning of each chapter. And then I integrate her life into that moment. And for example, we when we had to go pick out her urn for her funeral,
Mm-hmm.
um, it was so funny. I was looking at my husband, and he goes, "Okay, let's look at these pretty conventional urns." And there was this goofy urn. It was pink, and the wire was out, and it just stopped me. It stopped me in my tracks. It was as if she was saying, "Mom, this is the one." And I showed it to my husband, Tracy, and he looked at it and he said, "Oh, let's look at this one. It's got a pretty angel, and this one has a pretty cross." And I said, "Tracy, I think this is the one." And I turned to the lady and I said, "Is this urn real popular?" And she goes, "Oh, no." She goes, "It really is not popular. In fact, it's on sale because it's going to be discontinued." And the wire is kind of out, and it's kind of, not very traditional. And I went, "That's it. That's it." Because Carly was raw and
Mm-hmm.
goofy and funny, and as professional as she was silly and funny, so I relate that Earn story, which is a heartbreaking
Mm-hmm.
story, but it really was such a funny, loving touch to it because that's the one she wanted. She would have wanted the one. And so, anyway, when the funeral took place, the lady tapped me on the shoulder and she said, "I fixed the bow for you so the wire wouldn't be sticking out." So, the book is kind of, it is not all sad. I did not want it all sad. She wouldn't have wanted it all sad. And it offers hope, and love and respect and honoring, and 100 interviews from other people. I interviewed over 100 people who knew Carly and worked with Carly,
Oh.
and some of them were Shaquille O'Neal and big names, and then some of them were her friends or her person who cut her hair and did her makeup. So it's got a whole bunch of variety of people, but I got a lot of insight into her life. And one thing, Heather, that was really very interesting
Mm-hmm.
is that I don't know if you have children or not,
Oh yeah.
but as a mom, once kids grow up, you don't know their interactions with their work people. You don't know all their friends' interactions. When they're young, you're involved with all that, but when you get older, uh, it's like you don't know it. So when I interviewed people, I got some really amazing stories and funny stories, happy stories, stories of love,
Mm-hmm.
stories of appreciation. And I, I fell in love with my daughter even more so after the interviews, and if that's possible.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful too, to be able to take the time to meet the people who knew her at the time when she passed to fill in the
It is.
gaps of some of the things you might not have known. I do have two kids. My daughter's 20, Ashley, and my son is 28, Austin. So I
So
have
you know what I'm talking about.
I do. I do. I know most of the people that my daughter hangs out with, but I do not. I mean, my son, he's
Yeah.
in a career. I don't know everybody he talks to every day. I know
No.
quite a few
Yeah.
of them, but not all of them. So yeah, that would be really, really interesting. And of course, your daughter was everywhere because she worked for
She was.
ESPN, so she was all over. So
She was all over. And like I said, she worked for lots of people, and they had funny stories. Just not all funny. I don't mean she
Hmm.
was just all humorous funny, but just really interesting stories. In fact, there was one story which is in the
Hmm.
book, and it's about Michael Lombardi. And
Hmm.
Michael Lombardi was the general manager of the Cleveland Browns, and that's where she got her start, was at the NFL and the Cleveland Browns. And how she got it was is she worked for Tiger Television,
Hmm.
which is the television station for LSU, and she graduated. She did her undergraduate at Northwestern State University, and then she did her graduate work at LSU for the Manship School.
Okay.
And she was on Tiger TV, and she got there. It was pro day where, all the scouts went and looked at the college players and, to assess their talents. And she brought her stuff and got there at about 6:30 in the morning, put her stuff up and everything. And then all of a sudden, about 8 o'clock, a man tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Excuse me, this is my spot." And she goes, "Well, I didn't see you here getting here at 6:30 in the morning. This is my spot." And so he said, "Okay." And so he sat right next to her, and she started striking up a conversation and talking about wingspan and reach and everything like that. And the guy's name was Michael Lombardi. He was the general manager of the Cleveland Browns, and he struck up a conversation, gave her card, and said, "Look," he said, "you're good." He
Mm.
said, "I really want you as a character scout, and you could do some ESPN sideline reportings as well." And he said, "Keep in touch, and I really want you as part of the organization." And that was her big break. And if had she not stood up for herself, in her spot, she probably wouldn't have met him.
Well, it sounds to me like she's just kind of herself. Like be yourself in all settings and not cower down. Just kind
Right.
of yeah. What are
Be
things
your
that
authentic self. Yeah.
what are things that when you think about what people could learn from either from her and her adventures and her stories or even from you as a mom going through that grief? What are some
Right.
things that people could learn?
There's a few things that I can say. I think if Carly were to come back, she would definitely say, "Enjoy the journey,"
Mhm.
because she loved it. She loved her job. Um, she truly loved her job. She was married and loved her husband. She was not married. I mean, was not had a mother yet,
Mhm.
but she loved her family. And she truly was a person that enjoyed most of the time. I can't say every minute of the journey
Right.
because everybody has moments that I'm sure makes them humble and that sort of thing. But she did. She loved life. She laughed at life. And as a mom, I take that as enjoy your kids,
Mhm.
enjoy every minute because you don't know. You truly don't know what the future is going to bring. And if you get that call, which I hope no one ever does, uh, but when a call does come that someone has passed away in your life, you can look back and you could say, "Man, the last words I told Carly was, 'I love you.'"
Mm.
And you know, if that's the best I could do, that was mighty good. Grief is a struggle. Grief is hard. It doesn't have to break you, uh, but it's a hard thing. And, of
Mhm.
course, I still struggle to this day with grief. I have my great days, I have my good days, I have my sad days, I have my happy days. But the sad days, I can actually try to now be an optimist
Mhm.
and try to at least pull through. And the book helped me do this. The book helped me to write it down, get my thoughts into place, address my thoughts, and really say, "Okay, I can now speak about this without total tears."
So the book is
You
called
know?
Only Rainbows. How
Yes.
how did you get that title?
Oh, that's an interesting story. Um, the day that Carly died, it was at about 9:07, and her last Instagram post, she was an Instagrammer, she was an
Mhm.
influencer, she was in the media. And her last Instagram post was "Only rainbows after rain, the sun will always come again." It's a line from the Andy Grammer song, "Keep Your Head Up." She loved that song and she loved Andy Grammer. She actually has met Andy Grammer a few times because she did work at CBS Radio on a morning show in Cleveland. And one of her guests was Andy Grammer, and she actually got to sing with him a few times. And she knew him. He didn't remember her at the time, but then after he's gotten back with us and everything, he did remember her. But she wrote that post. That was her very last post to the world. And right as she did it, the day that she died, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we get this Instagram post from Andy Grammer. And he sings the lyrics, "Only rainbows after rain, the sun will always come again," and said, "We love you, Carly." And so that's how it all started. And so, we were bombarded with a plethora of rainbows.
Mhm.
And it was so interesting because I see rainbows everywhere. She not only has a microphone, but as her best friend, Matt Moscona, says, she now has a skyline. And she uses the skyline. She puts, I mean, rainbows are everywhere. We could be sitting in a restaurant and we'll look over our head and there's a rainbow picture.
Mhm.
Or, the day before the Saints play, almost every year there's a rainbow over the Superdome. And when Tigers play, there's a rainbow first opening game over Tiger Stadium. Miss Louisiana this past year, her little pageant girl, her little fleur de lis pageant girl was competing. There was a rainbow over the convention center. I mean, there are rainbows, and that song pops up. We can actually go into a restaurant and there'll be no music, and all of a sudden that song will come on. Then everything will get quiet again. So, it had to be "Only Rainbows." It just was so fitting.
So you mentioned Miss Louisiana. So tell me a little bit about her journey in pageantry. How long did she compete?
There's a reason why I'm laughing at it. She competed for 5 years.
Okay.
Okay. She was not the traditional pageant girl. And I know you hear that line a lot,
Mhm.
but Carly really wasn't the traditional pageant girl. I think how she got into pageants is she skipped high school, the last year in high school.
Uh-huh.
And so, anyway, she had a beautiful, beautiful singing voice. And consequently, she was supposed to be singing in the choir that day. And there were 100 people in the choir, and that's all she had to do to get the A in the class, and she would have gotten her scholarship. And she could have gotten her scholarship from math and science, but she didn't. Okay. But
Mhm.
this was her last chance. Well, she and her sister and a friend decided to jump in the car and go to the beach that day and skip school. And so she did. And the professor wouldn't give her she didn't earn the A, so he shouldn't have given it to her, but she got a C and blew her scholarship money. So my husband and I said, "Look, we're not paying for college. You blew it and everything like that." And we said, "But we do have an idea. There's this pageant at Northwestern State University, and it's called Lady of the Bracelet.
Mhm.
And it's got full scholarship. You've got talent. Go win it and pay it. And if you win that, we'll pay,
The difference or whatever.
most of your college."
Yeah.
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 So she really traditionally did not get it. She wore black fingernail polish and short hair, and she was too cool for words. She was hip to the game. She
Mhm.
had this, she was one of these cool people.
Mhm.
And so anyway, she goes, "Oh, Mom, this head doesn't wear a tiara." And we're like, "Okay, I guess you need to find a job then to pay for college." So she looked into it, and she found out that first runner-up, second runner-up, and third runner-up got scholarships too. So she had a plan that all she had to do was enter this Miss Northwestern Lady of the Bracelet every year, get scholarship money, and she was going to pay for her college. She had the confidence enough to do that, to at least know that she could win some kind of talent award or something like that.
Mhm.
So so she did. So she the first year she entered Miss Northwestern Lady of the Bracelet, and it's a funny story. And all of her pageant journeys are in the story, but this one particular one, she was. This was her first pageant. She gets on stage, and there's a lady, a former Miss LOB, which is Miss
Mhm.
Lady of the Bracelet, and she's a local media star and everything, and she was sitting next to us, and she said, "Oh, Carly's got a great body." And then she got up to sing, and she said, "Oh, Carly's got a gorgeous voice." She sang the traditional "Don't Rain on My Parade," knocked it out the park, did fabulous. Then she came out in evening gown, and tripped on her gown. And Farrah Rayner turns to me and says, "But good God, she walks like a horse." And she did, and she won. She won second runner up. And when she did win second runner up, my husband and I and the whole family goes, "She won! She won second runner up. How did she do that?" And so she got some of her scholarship money, and then she realized, this isn't such a bad gig to get some scholarship money. So she went on, and she eventually did win Lady of the Bracelet, which was a full scholarship. And so she loved representing her university. That was probably her most special title. But she didn't get into top 10 the first 2 years. Um, I think it was because she was quite different, and
Mhm.
quite different in interview. You know, she was very blunt and that sort of thing. And I go into that in the book. But by the third year, she was first runner up. And I know you know a little bit about pageants. So
Mhm.
she
For
went to
sure.
the Sweetheart pageant.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you're familiar with
Oh yeah.
Sweetheart. She absolutely loved it, and had a great time there, won the interview award, and then came back. I don't know. She might have won top 15, but top 10 performed. I don't know. I can't remember that. So that I didn't put that in the book because I couldn't find anybody to verify that one. Um, and shame on me for not remembering it. But then she came back, and she came back with a vengeance and won a title called Miss Shreveport, which was a big, big, big title in Louisiana. Dr. Ed is so generous and pays for everything from wardrobe to this to that to all sorts of fun things. And she prepared and prepared and prepared, and she was at the top of her game. And so it came down to first runner up and winner, and she was holding the girl's hand, and she was first runner up again.
Mhm.
And so anyway, long story short, she was, that was the only time I really have to say she was really, just kind of just real disillusioned with pageants. And because not because the winner wasn't good. That's
Mhm.
not the reason why I'm saying it, but it was like I really did my very, very best. And you have five people,
Mhm.
you don't know what they're thinking.
Yep.
And and it was like a defining moment. Like she says, I couldn't have done any better. And a lot of people, they have these message boards and everything like that. And a lot of these people said, "Oh, Carly's interview, probably held her up." Well, after she had passed away, I stumbled across the interview, and I had to get my nerve up, and it took a lot of nerve to put it into the DVD player and listen to it, because I knew at that moment that that's probably what held her back, because between the winner and Carly, everything was equal. She was a beautiful girl, well spoken, well everything, but Carly did have the edge in talent
Mhm.
on her. And so I just had the feeling that if I popped this interview in, I would get my answer. And I didn't. The interview was flawless.
Yeah.
And I can remember watching that interview, and excuse me because I'm getting tears in
Mhm.
my eyes, but watching that interview, and it was amazing. And so, I looked at her. well, I looked at her from sky. I didn't
Hmm.
look at her
Hmm.
from physical way. I just said, Carly, you did it. You
Hmm.
did it. And, uh, and then, do we have enough time to continue talking? I'm rambling on, but so
Yeah,
stop me when you need me to.
one thing I want to say really quick about the whole first runner up twice and that kind of thing, and the
Yeah,
thing that
she
people.
called it first loser.
Oh yeah. Well, my dad said that about his journey. He was an Olympic champion, but his first time to the Olympics, he won a silver, and he says, "Well, I'm the world's best loser if I'm a
Mhm.
silver medalist." So it's kind of a similar idea or thought process, but at the same time, in pageantry, it's one of the only sports I can think of where more than one person's deserving of the title, but only one is recognized. And so while your daughter wasn't recognized as Miss Louisiana that year, that doesn't mean that she didn't deserve it. And I think that's something that people have to realize in pageantry is there's always more than one deserving. And the
But
judges do the best they can with what they got, but it you can always look back and go, wow, but that person would have done great. So I'm sure your daughter would have been an incredible Miss Louisiana. But at the
oh,
same
I do,
time,
and I do believe, I truly believe she could have taken the crown at Miss America.
hmm
She had that national look, and
hmm
obviously so because she went on and she was right before she passed away. She had a national contract.
mm,
And, and by that time she had worked with Erin Andrews and Michelle Tafoya and Laura Rutledge, who was actually a pageant girl as well. And I do credit pageants. My husband always said it was Carly's finishing school.
yeah,
And it
oh for
truly
sure,
was.
oh for sure,
She learned, her first pageant, she walked like a horse.
hmm
But by the end of the pageantry, she was a graceful, elegant swan. Her what was it, the headshots,
hmm
her first one is just so funny compared to her last one. And so pageantry served Carly very well.
hmm
And especially with the interviewing and the confidence and everything like that, it served her very, very well. And you're right, she was not first loser. She
hmm
gained a lot of gifts from pageantry. um, and I don't know, maybe it wasn't her love
hmm
at first, but she kept doing it. And we didn't, she got her scholarship money, so she didn't have to do it any longer. But she kept doing it because I do believe she enjoyed the thrill of the game.
hmm
And but one thing that was really interesting is she enjoyed the thrill of the game. She enjoyed the talent portion. She loved the swimsuit portion. She tolerated the evening gown portion. But she also was a real different competitor in the fact that, well, I don't know about a different competitor, but she would wear the same outfit
oh
every
yeah,
year. She didn't believe in spending loads and loads of money on pageantry. Now,
hmm
when she won Miss Shreveport, it was the package, and that was the thrill of the title holder, the whole wardrobe and everything. But she wore those clothes all the way, throughout her
hmm
pageantry and her appearances and everything like that. Like, she believed in recycling stuff, and she believed in she sang 3 different songs for 5 different pageants, but her signature song was Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. She did it beautifully, and you could YouTube it if you would
hmm
like to listen to it. But she did believe in recycling things and believing that it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg to
hmm
do it. And she also truly believed that it got a bad rap, because pageantry helps women,
hmm absolutely,
and it really defines um, the who you are as a woman.
hmm
And it teaches you rejection, but it teaches you success, because when you're on that stage, you've had to get some kind of crown to get there, at least on the Miss America stage. I don't know about other pageants. And so, it defines success. It defines failure or rejection. It it defines, 25 judges told Carly no to Miss Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
But one person, Michael Lombardi, said yes because of those 25 people that told her no. She just kept getting better and better and better. And so it only takes one person to say yes, and the other 25 people might tell you no, but you can't let that discourage you,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And when you get out in your bathing or your swimsuit, I'm sorry because I don't use the proper
Yeah.
terms sometimes. I don't think swimsuit is so bad because Carly would speak of this on her podcast. She would say,
Mm-hmm.
look, at the combine, those guys have to come in skivvies
Mm-hmm.
and they have to look at them from head to toe to make sure that they fit on their team. Well, why can't Miss America show girls in swimsuits? They do not have to be skimpy swimsuits. They could be tastefully done swimsuits. And I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
do they still do
They changed.
swimsuit or do they do?
Not in America anymore. They changed it a few years back. They brought back
Mhm.
fitness. They took everything away for a little while. Now they brought back fitness. Now Rebel Athletic is the sponsor for Miss America. So all the girls get fitness wear sponsored by Rebel or they purchase through Rebel. And that's who their brand ambassador is. And so it's
Gotcha.
still very much about the health and fitness of the
Yeah.
participant, which I think is valid and valuable. It's just not in a swimsuit anymore. I can be in either camp. I'm not. I don't have a. I don't have necessarily a favorite. I think it's
Right.
important to care about your health and wellness to participate. But one thing I wanted to ask you, because I ask everybody, so I want to ask you.
Okay.
My podcast title is She Wins, and so I want to know, how do you define winning?
Enjoying the journey
Mm-hmm.
and believing in God, knowing that He has you, that you can walk it and you can smile every day, even in your darkest days. If you find some kind of humor, some kind of laugh, you've at least won the moment. So, sometimes if you want to apply that to pageantry, if you slip and you fall on your talent, laugh it off, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because that story is going to be your go to story for the rest of your life. You
I
know, sometimes your greatest failures are your greatest successes.
I love that. I think that's a really good way to close out the podcast
Yeah.
because what a beautiful message. I'm excited about your book. Tell people how to get it. Where are they going to be able to purchase?
Okay, it's called Only Rainbows, the Carley McCord story, written by Karen C. McCord. And as of right now, it's only in pre order on Amazon.com or BarnesandNobles.com. It will be released on February 25th, and I'll have more information via that time. But as of right now, you can pre order it. And if you could make us number one, boy, you'd make this mama happy.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Heather.